How's it going? Thought I would make some videos uh, over the next couple weeks talking about whatever, but then you could see my face. Um, Definitely have been exercising as much and eating lots of junk food. So I don't know if I look like I've put on 10 pounds. I probably have. Um, Anyways, this little video I thought I would make for those people thinking about college acceptances and where they got in, where they didn't get in. If you're a junior, where you're going to apply next year, what this is going to be like. You're probably seeing lots of seniors go through this process right now. So I just thought I would give you guys a little bit of my own just experience and my background and just my thoughts on all of it just to help you during this time. I know you guys have to make your decisions in the next like week or so about where you're going to go. First of all, um, I'll just tell you a little bit from my own experience. So when I was an undergrad or when I was in high school and my senior year, I didn't really know where I wanted to go specifically. There wasn't like this school I always dreamed of. I know some of you guys have been thinking about this for a long time, but I wanted to do well. First of all, I thought I wanted to major in architecture at the beginning of my senior year. So I was looking at schools to apply for architecture. And then I decided, no, there's no way I could be good at that. Or whatever. I don't know. I just had my doubts about it. So I said, well, I'm good at math. I'm good at science, physics, at least. So, and I'd always thought about engineering before, more specifically, thought about civil engineering. My dad would was a building contractor and would draw his own plans for houses. And I always thought that was cool. And I took a lot of drafting classes and I went to some conferences over summer when I was in high school. So I finally settled on mechanical engineering. And I didn't know where I wanted to go. So I was like, well, I just want to apply to like the best schools. Like I kind of thought in my head, I want to go to the best school for mechanical engineering, or at least one of the best schools. So back then we didn't, believe it or not, have internet at home, and all the things resources online weren't really there. So I um, went to the library and I looked at the U.S. News World Report magazine, the hard copy. That's all they had, and the top schools, and they break it down by different categories. And I looked at engineering, mechanical engineering, and I pretty much applied to, I think, most of the top 10 schools in mechanical engineering. And then I added some schools uh, closer to home, California, that weren't as internationally ranked, but were good schools in engineering. So my list was there were going to be 10 schools. So applied to Stanford and MIT, which were kind of like seen as like the best schools at that point in that major. UC Berkeley, Carnegie Mellon, Georgia Tech in Atlanta, Purdue, Cal Poly, UCLA, USC, and University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. Um, and that was 10 schools. That's a lot. And my counselor, kind of helped me with that. But my counselor recommended, why don't you consider Cornell? Like, I didn't even know what Cornell was. I went to a small school, tiny town, rural California. And apparently it was an Ivy League school. I didn't know that. I think I probably just thought of some of the major big names you always think of. But I decided to add it on her recommendation. And they were really good school in mechanical engineering too, but I just didn't consider them for whatever reason. So Cornell was my 11th school. Applied to all of them. I just thought, well, they're going to help me figure out, they're going to narrow the choices for me, where I get in or don't get in. I really thought I want to go to MIT or Stanford. They're considered the best. I didn't really have any other reasons to like them. I never visited either of them. But I thought, one of those would be my choice. So I got all my letters back and we actually got them physically in the mail. There was no checking your email. I didn't even have an email. There was no checking anything online. You just had to wait for the regular old mail. And I got in everywhere except for Stanford and MIT. So it definitely hurt. And that's a feeling that some of you guys are probably going through, that it feels bad to be rejected. It sucks. I'm not going to say it doesn't. It just, it doesn't feel good. And then those are schools I thought I wanted to go to. So that made it even worse. But I had all these other choices. But at the same time, it didn't make it any easier because like I didn't have any preference in all these schools. So um, I'd visited Cal Poly before because I had friends that were going there already, who graduated the year before me. I'd gone to their open house day when I was a junior. I spent a summer at UC Berkeley taking classes the summer right before my senior in high school. So I kind of felt comfortable with UC Berkeley, and I liked it. I thought it was a cool campus, and it was a interesting experience taking classes there. So I knew a bit about UC Berkeley, but that was it. I don't think I'd visited any of these other schools at all. So I think, through some process, I finally kind of narrowed it down. It's like, well, it's either UC Berkeley, um, or I was considering Georgia Tech, Carnegie Mellon, and Cornell. I was like, well, I should probably go visit these schools. So I booked some flights and I contacted schools ahead of time. Some of them had like activities that were going on, maybe during spring break. And Cornell was like, yeah, you can stay in the dorms for a few nights with some current students. I thought that was cool. Carnegie Mellon, same thing. That's in Pittsburgh. Georgia Tech wouldn't let me stay anywhere on campus for free, and I was poor. And I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to visit Georgia Tech. Um, and so I visited Cornell. It was a cool experience. Ithaca. It's a beautiful campus, upstate New York, next end of a lake. These waterfalls and gorges in the middle of campus. And I got to stay with some students and experience that. I went to Carnegie Mellon, Pittsburgh, and that's a much smaller school, kind of a totally different vibe, private school, but small, like 10,000 small, like total grad and undergrad, at least back then. Really good in like engineering and math and computer science, and then arts, drama. So kind of some totally different things. Very small campus. And then I came home, and then I had to make my decision. I did go up to Berkeley again for their open house, even though I'd spent time there. And I had to decide, well, and people ask me, I don't know, students ask me, what do you think about different schools? So Berkeley obviously was a state school, public school. Cornell, Carnegie Mellon, those were private schools. Georgia Tech is a state school, but in Georgia. So financial aid, generally, going to a state school was the cheapest. Berkeley would have been really cheap. Cal Poly would have been really cheap. I did get into USC, and they were going to offer me a full ride scholarship, so that was tempting. But that wasn't really one of the ones I wanted to go to. Cornell private schools offered me pretty good financial aid. I mean, need-based financial aid. I didn't. My parents didn't make a lot. And the state schools like Michigan, Purdue, Georgia Tech, they were the highest. So that kind of knocked them out, I think, earlier on. They just weren't going to offer me financial aid as an out-of-state out-of-state student to a state school. Berkeley's public. It's big, a lot bigger than Cornell. Cornell's big, like Cal Poly big. Cornell's a private. It really kind of came down to finally Berkeley and Cornell. And they were very different schools, very different environments. Cornell's in the middle of nowhere in New York, middle of nowhere in New York. It's 3 hours from the city. Berkeley's in the middle of the Bay Area. So there are all these different things. I finally decided to go to Cornell. Now, to me, that's kind of interesting because I wasn't even thinking of going to Cornell at all. It wasn't even on my list of 10 schools to apply to, my big list. My counselor recommended. And that ended up being the school I went to. And it was an amazing experience, great experience. And that's one of the things that I want you guys to kind of take away from this is that you think you know where you want to go. You think this is the school I have to go to, the perfect school for all my future plans. But that school might not be the best school for you. In fact, when I was at Cornell, I had some friends that had friends that were going to MIT, because I had a lot of friends from the Northeast when I was at Cornell, and they knew people going to MIT. And the picture they painted was kind of a school that I thought I probably wouldn't have totally enjoyed going to. It sounded intense. It sounded much more engineering centric, which I was majoring in engineering. But at Cornell, I had friends that were all different kinds of majors. A lot of engineering people only hang out with engineering people, but I kind of had friends in all different kinds of majors, and I thought I valued that, you know. So um, I just thought it was interesting that the school I thought I for sure wanted to go to, based off of not enough information, ended up being a school I think I would have decided not to go to. And the school that I didn't even think about applying to was the school I went to, and it was perfect. It was an amazing experience. It gave me so many opportunities, made friends for life, and I'm so glad I went there. So I just want you to kind of think, you know, the places that you are choosing from right now, one of those schools could just be the perfect school, even if the school you thought was supposed to be the perfect school isn't on your list anymore. And you might even decide the school that you think you want to go to, that you even got into, isn't the school. So it really depends on you and how it matches with you, and the experience. You can get as good of an education at any of these schools for sure. But there's a lot of other, just things that impact, just your experience there. And just as sort of another picture, one of my best friends from high school, probably my best friend, I was his best man in his wedding. He was my best man in my wedding. And he went to school in Coalinga with me. And then he went to Taft College. He had lived in Taft before. They have a community college there. He went there for a couple of years. Then he transferred to Cal State Bakersfield, which is near Taft. And that's probably not the school a lot of people are thinking of as like the school you want to go to get a great education. Now, he was a math major, and he decided to focus on statistics. And it took him a while, which could be a side effect of going to a state school. It might be harder to get the classes you want to graduate in time. But I think part of the thing is he had a lot more fun than I did. I got my degree in 4 years. I got it done with no AP credit. I didn't take any AP credit. I had a chance to take one class credit for it, but I decided not to. That's another discussion later video. It took him 7 years, which I think I've heard is like the average to get a bachelor's degree at a Cal State University. He graduated a year before me in high school, but he got his bachelor's degree a year after I got my master's degree. So I finished high school, got my bachelor's and my master's in less time than it took him to get his bachelor's. But anyways, he really smart guy. And that was just the best option he had. He was working full time while going to school, and but he got his degree, and he pretty quickly got a job with Target, the store chain, their headquarters in Minneapolis, doing statistics stuff for them, and working for their credit department. They issue their own credit cards and things like that. And he did awesome. And he got a job at GE Finance after that. Companies wanted him. He was almost like, he was being given the responsibilities of people at these companies that probably like PhDs. Like, he was a smart guy and good leader. So anyways, with his degree from Cal State Bakersfield, he's done amazing things. He worked for a startup in Atlanta, a medical startup. They went public. He got benefits. He now is working with another company. He's had amazing opportunities. So that's just to show you, like, hey, even Cal State Bakersfield, you can get they teach the same stuff. You can get that education that you can get anywhere else, and it's not going to keep you from becoming very successful and being able to get a job anywhere in the US, a good job. So anyways, I just want you to think about these things. I know this is a tough situation. Feel free to contact me if you have questions. I mean, I can give you my own input, my own feelings about it. I've seen a lot of my own students go to a lot of schools, big schools, small schools, turn down big schools for small schools, for a variety of reasons. And I don't think they've regretted it. I don't regret the schools I went to. Now, by the way, when grad school rolled around at Cornell, I decided to go to grad school, and I applied to MIT again, even though I'd already decided I really want to go there. It was kind of like hoping to get in, and then I would tell them I didn't want to go, like a revenge application, which I don't think is healthy for myself. And anyways, applied to Stanford again. I really did want to go to Stanford. I wanted to get back to the West Coast. That's one thing I realized 4 years on the East Coast is I love the West Coast, love California in ways I didn't realize. So sometimes it's good to get away and then maybe come back. I applied to Georgia Tech again for grad school. They were really good in aerospace engineering. At this point, I decided I wanted to do aerospace engineering, fluid mechanics. I applied to Cornell, applied to Princeton. They had a really good grad program. So I applied to those schools, and I got in everywhere except for MIT. So my whole plan of applying to MIT, I mean, they were really good in aerospace engineering, but I think deep down, like if I wasn't going to, if I can get into MIT, I'm going to get into some of these other places. And I feel like MIT was not the school I wanted to go to. So that was dumb. But I got to Stanford. So I proved myself. And I think that's something too, that if you don't get into some of these schools right now as an undergrad, for undergrad, it's hard as a high schooler to make yourself stand out. They get so many applications, and so many of these students have all the grades, they have all the activities, they have all the classes, they have the crazy GPA. How do they really decipher who is who? And that's just something else I want to tell you is that, you know what, you are capable of going to these schools. And they may have even admitted someone that was less qualified for you, less qualified than you, not even on purpose, just because it's hard to even make that call, But when you apply to grad school, you don't need to be great at everything. You take tests that are specific to grad school you want to go to, so the GRE, and for me, and they cared about how I did math and logic, and they looked at my grades at Cornell, and Cornell is a university that they know, and I got letters of recommendation from professors there. So now I was able to really stand out for grad school, and I got into Stanford. So if you don't get in for undergrad and you really want to go to these schools, there's always that chance that you can apply for grad school, and I think you'll probably have an easier time to make yourself stand out if you put that work in and choose to do that. So just something to think about. I'm so happy the way it played out for me, even though it wasn't really what I had initially hoped for or thought that it would be. But it really, the places I've been, the schools I went to, the friends I made, they led me to being the person I am now. And I'm glad for all those experiences. Some of them were hard, some of them weren't fun, but that's just all part of the path. Anyways, I hope you guys are able to make those decisions. I know it's kind of crazy right now too, just with everything else that's going on, but I hope this was helpful to you. And if anything, you can see my face. I miss having you guys in class, and it's definitely hard doing this remotely. And I'm sure it's tough for you guys for a variety of reasons. I'm sure some of you guys have a lot more challenges than some of the rest of us. So, all right.